Hello, good afternoon. My name's Denzil Monk. I run a production company called Arwen Productions, but my presentation is about a pre-startup company, a new business, which is what this study has been all about. This is called MovieBees. The problem which set out to address is, well, we broke it down into the different sort of customer areas: filmmakers, investors and fans. For filmmakers, it's difficult to raise finance. That's always been the case, probably always will be the case. At the moment, particularly, it's difficult to raise production finance. Budgets are falling, but the number of productions is growing greater. It's difficult for filmmakers to fully exploit the opportunities that arise out of direct distribution, which digital allows. So it's difficult to, unless you have millions of pounds or millions of dollars of marketing spend, it's difficult to reach that audience. In this space, crowdfunding is something that's emerged over the last couple of years, and crowdfunding is really the core of what this business is about. The crowdfunding sites that are out there fall into sort of two categories. There's kind of creative venture type crowdfunding, and then there's equity crowdfunding. I'll talk a little bit more about how that breaks down later on, but most film productions which use crowdfunding, in fact pretty much all of them, sit in the crowdfunding space, where the only thing which the owner, the producers, can offer back is things like pre-selling DVDs, perks. There's no investment able to happen there. Whereas equity crowdfunding sites, of which there's a huge growth happening at the moment, it's a real emergent culture. Equity crowdfunding sites are geared for startups. They're not geared for film production, special purpose vehicles. They don't sort of serve that very well. So I'm kind of looking at the space that sits between them. The alternative to either of those things is for a production company to set up their own crowdfunding site, and there are several examples of that. There's several quite high-profile examples of that over the last few years. Currently, Iron Sky is a film which is just sort of hitting the festivals now, which used crowdfunding to raise a significant amount of their finance. There's a Spanish film called The Cosmonaut, which is where this T-shirt comes from, which has contributed towards their production. They're now in post-production. They raised 800,000 euros for their film. Approximately 15% of that was crowdfunded. The rest of the money came off the back of the crowdfunding, but then being able to pull in broadcasters and other traditional financing. And they exist in an interesting space because they're also exploring Creative Commons licensing for the material that they produce, and trying out lots of different things. For example, when they went into production, they did some live broadcasts of the shoots through their website. But it's a very the complexity and the evolution of their own web presence is something that they've managed and grown, but it's kind of limited to where they exist. For investors, investing in movies is a high-risk business, and investors are looking for assurances that the films that they invest in have some chance of being viable. Gone are the days where pre-sales to territories can shore that up. So what alternatives are there? Where else can you look for assurances that a film, once it's made, is going to reach an audience, that an audience wants to see it? Also, if you want to return, as an investor, if you want a return on investment, you need to be a sophisticated investor. Unless you're a high net worth individual, it's very difficult to invest in a film. So for people who might want to invest £5, £50, even £500, it's very difficult. And for fans, it's difficult to get close to movies. Fans want to be involved in film, the film world, and it's difficult. There are few opportunities to get involved, to get close to it. So there's a disconnect between films that get financed and films that get made. So the questions that this study set out to explore is really to see whether there is a viable business, to test the feasibility of whether there is a viable equity crowdfunding service that can be provided. Looking at the market for the potential for such a service, looking at what's already out there, looking at where the gaps are, investigating what kind of technologies could provide those services, whether there's a financial model that works, and looking at Superfast and looking at what additional benefits Superfast could bring to that. And I think at the outset, the entire concept of a kind of a platform that operates in this way, it would be possible without Superfast broadband, but it wouldn't really be possible to explore it to its full potential. The study's been undertaken by myself. I look forward to doing a little animated version of myself in the future through my company, Arwin, working in partnership with Northern Alliance, who are a chartered accountancy firm who specialise in the film production business. I've been working with a guy called Mike Kelly, who is ex-head of finance for UK Film Council and Warner Brothers Europe and Asia, and knows the film financing business very well. He's also particularly pertinent to where we think a lot of the initial market for this crowdfunding was instrumental in setting up and running the micro film, that microwave scheme that Film London run, so for micro project features. And Oxford Innovation through the Grow Cornwall scheme have also been supporting the development of this idea. So just briefly go through some of the findings. There are 7 billion of us on this planet at the moment. 2 billion of us are online. In the 5 or 6 years that crowdfunding's been a sort of an undercurrent, growing, particularly this year, growing into the mainstream as part of what happens through social media on the internet. Over $1 billion has been crowdfunded to date, and that figure's actually from 2 years ago, so it's probably quite a lot higher than that. Over 1 million people have involved themselves in crowdfunding of some sort, and again, these figures are a couple of years old, and the last 12 months has seen an exponential growth in the number of platforms that are out there and the interest in crowdfunding. In the world of film, there are 2 main players really. There's Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Indiegogo operates globally. You can set up a project from anywhere. There are several students on the film courses here who have raised 3, 5, 8 grand for their final productions using Indiegogo. There are several feature films that have been financed through Indiegogo as well. Kickstarter is, you need a US bank account to set up a project on Kickstarter. It seems to be the favoured crowdfunding platform at the moment for film. Both Indiegogo and Kickstarter, there are starting to be examples of films coming through, playing at major festivals and starting to sort of, use that as a proper financing model. But, as I say, it's limited what you can offer on that. This chart shows the growth in monthly pledges with Kickstarter. Kickstarter operates an all or nothing policy, so you set a target for how much money you want to raise and how long it's going to take you to raise it. If you don't reach that target, you don't get anything. People's money doesn't come out of their bank account. So the pledges, they started in 2009. You can see the growth to 2011, pledges going up to $7 million a month. So their turnover in the first 2 years that Kickstarter operated, the bulk of the money that was pledged through crowdfunding was for music projects and film projects, and $20 million worth of film projects were raised their money through Kickstarter in that first 2 years. This is a little chart just showing some differentiation between the proposal for MovieBees and some of the other sort of leading crowdfunding sites. They tend to fall into these 2 categories where you donate. So you can see Kickstarter and Indiegogo. You can't lend money, you can't invest money, you can only donate money. Some operate an all or nothing policy, some operate an any amount that's raised policy. On the other side of things, you've got businesses like Crowdcube and Grow VC, who are equity crowdfunding platforms, who are set up for startups. There's no film projects on those. They're investment only, no donations, no loans. MovieBees is set to sort of pick the best of both worlds and create a bespoke service for filmmakers where you can raise donations, loans, sell t-shirts, pre-sell DVDs, but also get serious finance from investors at any scale. We did a lot of market research into the state of the production market, both in the UK in Europe and to a lesser extent globally, breaking down the number of productions each year and the size of the budgets of those, looking at UK low to micro budget features, theatrical documentaries. The majority of films which are being financed through crowdfunding at the moment are social issue documentaries. That's because that's the fit with the facility that's available. That's not to say that there aren't lots of people wanting to raise finance for other types of films. It's just that in the market that's there at the moment, it's limited what you're competing with other ideas that have social benefit, or so it's what works at the moment. Other UK independents, so higher budget features, non-UK features. We use the Audiovisual Observatory to get a lot of those figures. UK shorts and non-UK shorts. The shorts, much smaller amounts of money per short film than per feature. It's a slightly different thing, but we didn't want to exclude it because shorts are a stepping stone to features, and there are a lot of short films that get made, and it's the sort of amount of money to make a short film is very easy for somebody to raise without already having a big fan base. And we prepared a 10-year forecast based on our assumed penetration of that market and based on our initial costings. We've got more work to do refining those financials, but it's stacking up. Micro-budget filmmaking is growing. There's over 100 micro-budget film. Micro-budget is kind of 50 to 250,000. Low budget, 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5 million, and then higher than that. So budgets overall are falling. The London production, the London film market, budgets have been falling over the years. They're sort of averaging around 1.2 million at the moment. And then in the micro-budget world, there's a sort of a huge growth because people are in the money they would have raised to make a short film at a decent sort of production level, 40, 50 grand. You can make a micro-budget feature for that. So budgets are falling, but the number of productions is growing, and technology across the film value chain will only increase that curve. So digital, and by digital I also mean social digital, has already transformed film production. That's happened, you know, we've seen that over the last 10 years. Made a massive difference to the way that films get made and also the sort of entry level into that marketplace. At the moment, it's really interesting space is distribution. It's radically changing the opportunities for film distribution. There are some interesting options out there for people who want to either completely self-distribute or have that as part of a hybrid distribution plan. And I think that it's time to bring film financing into the 21st century and change, because film financing is a little closed thing that happens for a very small number of people, but film is something that pretty much everybody enjoys being involved with. So I think there's an opportunity to open up the market in the same way that it has done for video film production, to do that for financing. So crowdfunding is a rapidly growing internet phenomenon. As I say, it's kind of been an undercurrent over the last few years. Last year it sort of grew a bit. This year people in the crowdfunding world are saying it will be the year that it kind of hits the mainstream, and I think that's the case. You see the equity crowdfunding sites are making that move into more sort of traditional investment territory. So it'll be, you know, there will be a huge plethora of sites setting up. You can see it happening now, but they all tend to fall into these two camps at the moment. Not much of a sort of a. There are some businesses operating in bespoke territory, but at the moment globally, there's no dedicated film crowdfunding facility. There's no equity crowdfunding service for film unless somebody sets it up specifically themselves. There's no service that provides that, and nobody's joined the dots between crowdfunding and traditional film financing. Not just in the financing, but an interesting thing that came out of this study is looking at how the connections that are out there on the web for filmmakers. So from the producer's point of view, the connections that are out there for your entire life cycle, from sort of the original idea through financing, production, post-production, distribution, all the kind of facilities that are out there. There's not a lot connecting them. There's not a lot that makes life easier. There's a lot that could be easier. There's a few things, Without a Box and IMDb and a couple of other services owned by Amazon, there's a bit of integration happens between them, but not a lot, and it could be a lot better. There's nothing crossing the entire value chain. There's nowhere really that helps, particularly sort of first-time feature filmmakers, second-time feature filmmakers to make that journey. There's no one in this space right now. So the lessons that I've learnt through this study, we think from the financials that we've run and from looking at the costs and the options of how we might go about setting up, that MovieBees is a viable proposition. There's and actually we've been very conservative in a lot of our estimates, so we think that once we refine that better, it's going to start looking like a very investable proposition. Through the process, we've interrogated, refined, tested the feasibility of the proposition. Originally, we were looking at links with distribution and looking at options around whether MovieBees as a business should include direct distribution and provide that service. And obviously, that's something, if we were hosting high-end, high-quality video, that's something which would absolutely require Superfast to be able to provide that. But the conclusion quite quickly is that there's other people in that space, and actually our best bet to create a feasible business is to focus on the core of what it is that we want to do, and to be well connected. There's lots of things out there, and actually being a destination where at the start of that process where you can connect people through is that sort of end-to-end service, helping pull together the ecology of the sort of the film value chain is something which I think would help us and would attract people to that space. We secured a partnership with Northern Alliance, and Mike's come on board as the financial director of MovieBees through this study, so that's been fantastic. And we've attracted, including this study, around £40,000 worth of development investment and startup support, and that has opened routes to potential investors, which I'll come on to in a minute. So, yeah, I mean, Superfast will allow this business to start up where it wants to end up. So instead of evolving things, slowly, we need to be able to start up, keeping our costs down, and we need to be able to, if it works the way that we anticipate it will, we need to be able to scale fast. So being able to operate using cloud services is something which is, just makes complete sense. And also the world of film, there are high expectations of high quality high value sort of video production that happens in every aspect of what we do. So all our communications, we anticipate, we'll be able to do live broadcast. People will be able to do live pitches, and all of these things become possible with a good connectivity. So the kind of conclusions are that there's definitely a space there in the market. There's a potential viable market there, and what we need to do is get a minimum viable product to that market as quickly as possible, and be light on our feet, being able to make sure that we fit the space that's there. So our next steps are to secure finance and use a lean startup approach to create a sustainable business. MovieBees wants to become the premier destination for crowdfunding for film. That's kind of where we want to be. We want anybody who wants to use crowdfunding to finance their film, we want to be coming to MovieBees, because it will offer the best service that is available for filmmakers, and by doing that we'll also offer the best service and the best user experience for fans. And by connecting across other aspects of the industry, it becomes a destination where it's not just about financing movies, it's about being part of that whole sort of film culture. So recruiting a highly skilled, well-connected team, that's what we're working on at the moment, particularly the technical director. I've got somebody who we're talking to about that at the moment. And we also need to recruit the initial projects. When we build the product and get it out there, that first set of projects need to be viable. They need to be people who want to play in that space, and that's kind of the next step really, is to get that batch of those first projects together and get the platform built and out there, and then start learning with it live. I think that's the way to go. So the timescale for that, right now, this is what I'm doing, is refining our assumptions and projections, defining the features of that minimum viable product, recruiting key personnel, recruiting those early adopter projects, and identifying seed investment. By May, we want to secure a seed investment and start building through the summer so that we're ready to launch that minimum viable product in October, and then start learning with our customers who will be, will be paying as they go. So hopefully by early next year, we'll have it ready to get some more significant investment to accelerate and take what initially will be focused mostly in the UK and maybe with 1 or 2 European projects, and take that global, because obviously North America is the largest market there. That's me. Any questions?
Questions for Denzil? If you wait for the mic. I've got one all the way down the front for you. Melissa.
A few things. I love the name, really like it. And also, it's not really a question, but my friend did his music album recently, which was crowdfunded through Pledge Music, and it's been a real success, and it's been really good. And the question I had, I suppose, was how do you pay back a loan if the film doesn't work? Because I noticed you offered loans on your thing, and I sort of thought that's...
There wouldn't be a guaranteed payback. It would be part of the loan agreement, was that it's a risk, so it would get written off if there was no return there. But that's something which would be a relationship between the lender and the producer. We would facilitate that arrangement. We might provide pro formas and a service around the detail of it, but we wouldn't actually be holding the responsibility of that loan. Same with investments, although there's an investment pot which would kind of house part of the business as well. The investments would be with the production company, so we'd be servicing.
So you're just providing the platform on which people can start talking.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there one more? Oh, Peter. Sorry.
There's one there as well. Yeah.
It's applicable to a number of things that you have the psychology of the fan, isn't it?
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
model,
Yeah.
Football, racehorses,
etc.
Politics,
all sorts.
I mean, it's a fascinating sort of project, particularly linked to film. But I mean, are you being very clear that you would stay in the domain of film? That
business, yes. The knowledge that's built up behind it. There's various directions we could go with that, which we're thinking about.
But what are you therefore doing about what is the primary driver in terms of your understanding, which is the psychology of love or adoration? Because without that, you haven't got any crowdfunding, have you? So do you work at that end as well? So
and actually the dynamics of the crowd and how you work with a crowd, and actually, although the term that is familiar with everybody is crowdfunding, my preferred term is swarm investing, because actually an intelligent swarm is more akin to what we're trying to develop through that movement than a crowd. So that's something which is very much part of our thinking, part of the data collection that we'll be working with.
I'm sorry, Denzil, if I missed this because I wasn't here at the beginning, but obviously it looks like potentially a great business model. It could be a global thing, cloud-based. It's all good. How does it actually, though, hook into sort of Cornish quicker connectivity to businesses and people?
Sorry, how does it?
How does it particularly hook into faster broadband in Cornwall?
Well, I think the entire concept of it kind of could work much slower with slower broadband. It's not. If there was no broadband, it wouldn't work at all, because there'd be no video delivery. The better the quality of the broadband, the broader that gets, the better the user experience gets. I mean, it's more of a holistic fit than a specific technology.
Because, of course, being a global product, it's dependent on the quality of people's broadband everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, though of course that can be tailored at different scales. And actually, one of the things that is really interesting, at one extreme, you've got Superfast and you can go all bells and whistles there. At the other extreme, you've maybe got limited mobile phone connectivity in large parts of the world with no broadband. And how do you reach all of those people and provide the best quality user experience for everybody built into the same system? So we're kind of looking at, it's not a pure Superfast project, it crosses that, but Superfast, I think, offers us the opportunity to, as well as providing a much better experience for the back end of the business to operate from a user experience point of view, it means that we can make that a much more enjoyable space to be in. And I'm not going into any of the detail of the features, because that's kind of what we're going to be launching soon, hopefully. Yeah.
Just a question really about sort of the business model. A number of things really. If you're introducing filmmakers to potential investors, how do you make your money? But also, what are the kind of compliance issues in terms of messing around with investors and stopping people getting ripped off? The Financial
Services and Markets Act and the FSA regulation, which is all stuff which we've been looking at and talking to FSA about. So there are certain aspects which you can do, you don't need to be regulated for, and some of the introduction type stuff you can do quite happily. And certainly in the donate space, it's easy, and buying things like all that is very easy. The regulation is what's kept the equity side of it quite sparse up until recently, and it's changing in the States. The law's changing in the States as we speak about it. It's possible if you're regulated in this country now. Crowdcube's the leading UK equity crowdfunding platform, and they're FSA regulated. So there are certain things you need that regulation for. So whether we go that route or partner for that route is to be decided. And then there's a sort of fuzzy space in the middle as well. Also, the regulation is confused by the whole concept of crowdfunding, really. So it's although there's some very clear-cut stuff, there's also a huge grey area, and we'll make sure where there's a clear cut that we're performing as we ought to be, and where the grey areas will push the boundaries.
And your model is you just take a slice on
it's investment? Well, that's one of the revenue streams. There's various streams, but yeah, that's part of it.
All right, we'll end it. We're going to have a little plenary session at the end, so for any remaining questions. So thanks very much for that, Denzil.